Coming up, we are visiting with the new Miss Indian World, Tashina Red Hawk, and women are taking the microphone at the UN Permanent Forum for Indigenous Issues. Plus, we visit the first Native Teacher of the Year from Washington State. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is a proud supporter of Indian Country Today. Students at Cronkite News and Gaylord College at the University of Oklahoma cover Indigenous communities together. This important work is distributed by more than 100 news organizations. This collaboration provides a much-needed boost to coverage of Native American communities nationwide. Learn more at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Thank you for joining us. We start in Washington, D.C., where the White House has kicked off its Native Women's Symposium. These gatherings offer Indigenous advocates a chance to speak with the Biden administration about issues that are important to Native women. The first session celebrated the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. There was a panel of Indigenous advocates and leaders who spoke with Interior Secretary Deb Haaland. This discussion included what the Department of Interior needs to do next in order to engage VAWA's new provisions. In total, there will be 4 sessions for this symposium. In New Mexico, wildfire season has come early, and one blaze in particular is extremely close to tribal lands. The Cerro Pelado fire has burned over 22,000 acres. It is only 10% contained as of Tuesday morning. Residents near the Valles Caldera were asked to evacuate over the weekend. The fire is near Indigenous communities like Cochiti Pueblo, which is home to more than 1,500 people. Over 300 people attended a Monday night public meeting, including many tribal citizens and Pueblo governors. Fire officials have warned that high winds may cause the flames to move quickly, and the cause of this fire is under investigation. In Peru, 700 indigenous people ran for the hills after being evicted from Peru's largest Chinese-owned copper mine. More than 1,000 riot police officers fired tear gas canisters at the demonstrators. The people responded with stone throwing. People from the Fuerabamba community were protesting and camping at the Las Bambas mine for 14 days. They said the mining company bought their land and promised 180 hectares of land to the indigenous people. The company built a new settlement in the Andes where the Fuerabamba villagers had been relocated. Las Bambas is responsible for up to 2% of the world's copper production. The Navajo Nation has announced a key appointment. Lashana So will serve as the new executive director for the nation's Washington, D.C. office. So is originally from Smoke Signal, Arizona. Prior to this appointment, she served as the New Mexico Assistant Secretary of Indian Education. Navajo President Jonathan Nez commented on So's hire, saying, in part, "With her extensive background and experience, we are confident that she will advocate for our people and strengthen our nation's relations at the federal level. She grew up on the Navajo Nation, achieved a higher education, and now she is returning home to help our people once again." So will begin her new role on May 19th. Well, if you are going to be in Glendale, Arizona, and are looking for a way to celebrate May the 4th in an Indigenous way, check out our next story. The Navajo dub version of Star Wars: A New Hope is coming exclusively to a drive-in movie theater just 20 minutes from downtown Phoenix. This event is a partnership between the Navajo Nation Museum and Providence Pictures. If you register for free online and show up early, you'll even be able to meet some of the Navajo voice cast. Filmmaker Daniel Golding is producing an episode on the event for an upcoming PBS series. Golding spoke to ICT about why he thinks this space opera connects with Indigenous audiences.
When you look at it on a deeper level, I think there's a real connection to Star Wars and the Native experience, right? Around colonization, which is much deeper.
Organizers say this free event is open to the public and costumes are encouraged. Well, those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, Indigenous excellence at the United Nations and at the White House. Plus, meet the newly crowned Miss Indian World. Stay with us. We're continuing our coverage of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. Right now, the world's largest gathering of Indigenous leaders is happening in New York City. ICT's Carina Dominguez is covering the forum at the United Nations headquarters. Hi, Carina, welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
So we've been through 1 week of this permanent forum. Tell us what we know so far.
Right. So that first week we did see, the election of a new president or a new chair rather, and that is Dario Jose Mejia Montalvo from Colombia. And then we did see, a lot of different conversations, all of them centering around FPIC, free, prior, and informed consent. So one of those was a conversation with a lot of women, Indigenous women, calling for the financial institutions to divest from this extractive industry. So basically, they make it pretty clear, you can't continue to invest in these industries, and, say you call for a sustainable future. So I did write an article about that, and there were a lot of powerful women, powerful, things were said regarding that. But there were other stories as well. So one of them, as you know, we're partnering with GRIST and High Country News as well for our coverage here. So Tristan Aton, who is from GRIST, he came out with an article as well, and it was about Hawaii. So the Indigenous Youth Caucus was actually calling for the demilitarization of Hawaii and the Pacific kind of generally. And this is, coming after 14,000 gallons of fuel spilled. And, people are obviously upset. Hawaiians take their water very seriously. It's sacred to them, as it is for a lot of Indigenous people. But even more so for them, it's definitely got more of a spiritual element. So, it is very powerful hearing from these youth, hearing from the different people who, want to see these changes. So basically, they're calling on the UN to kind of launch an investigation to, probe into what happened at this facility. But they're also calling to put Hawaii on the list of non-self-governing territories. So that would put Hawaii on this list of colonized territories. So for instance, Guam and a couple of other places are on there as well. So that is something that they were requesting. And then along those lines, another reporter from GRIST, Joseph Lee, he came out with a story regarding the Indigenous Taino people in Puerto Rico, and very much kind of along the same lines. They don't have, political standing, and they don't have US representation. They can't vote. A lot of people know that. So to advocate for environmental justice and cultural preservation, they're forced to come to these forums here, to travel to, the United Nations here in New York City. So so that's kind of what a lot of the conversations have been centered around. So they're going to take some of these, testimonies and some of these recommendations into consideration, and then they'll go ahead and, pass those along to the Economic and Social Council that ultimately, they're kind of in charge of, passing these along as well. So it's just, layer upon layer of diplomacy, but very, very cool to see all these Indigenous leaders come together and just, really empower each other and inspire each other.
Carina, I understand one of the leaders speaking out is from Colombia. Tell us about her.
Yes, Maria Medina Quisquio. So she is here. She traveled all the way from this encampment. So basically what's going on there, there's 15 different indigenous groups. All but one of them, 14 of these different groups are represented in this camp where, these people have been displaced for the last 7 months. So they've seen illegal mining, legal mining displacing them. But on top of that, paramilitary groups, narcos as they call them as well. So there's a lot of different, things that are displacing them at the moment. And it's been so intense with the violence, and some of these stories that I've had to hear are so painful, but I'll be reporting on this more. So there'll be more to come on that. But, Maria is here, she's speaking, she's giving her testimony at the UN. But, this means that she could possibly be putting, her life on the line here. She can go back and be assassinated like another woman, Cristina, she said, who was in Bera, who was from, this area that she's from as well. So she is just, thankful to be here and to be sharing this experience. And she had some really, inspiring things to say. Take a listen.
Para encontrarnos entre todas, independientemente que yo
I get to learn from this, and I get to leave this as a legacy that I can continue, even though it's very terrifying. I have a family, I have a child that I don't want to leave behind, and even though we are separated by countries, all of us, countries, the borders that they put together for us, we're united globally, and it's been a gift to be able to be here for that.
Eso ha sido el mejor regalo de poder venir acá, esa experiencia.
Such powerful words from Maria. Carina, thank you so much for your reporting and for being here today.
Thank you.
The Miss Indian World pageant began in 1984 as an offshoot of the Gathering of Nations powwow. This weekend, a new winner was crowned out of 23 contestants. The new title holder is Tashina Red Hawk, who is Sicangu Lakota. We're very excited to visit with her today. Hello, Tashina. Welcome to the ICT Newscast.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So take us through the moments, I should say, before they announced your name. What was going through your head and, what was your immediate reaction?
So, we actually had dress rehearsal in the morning and we were all practicing our lineups, how we would come into the arena, and they were using our contestant numbers so we could all practice. So they just mocked winning personal interview, contestant number 1. And that alone gave me goosebumps, like my stomach, I feel like completely dropped. And that was just dress rehearsals. So after we got done dancing grand entry and we went into the actual crowning, it was just, I had all the goosebumps, all the little hairs standing up. Definitely, it was thrilling.
Was it anything that you could ever prepare for? I remember watching a clip of you and your mother, and I could imagine that was just a really emotional moment.
It was a huge, greatly emotional moment for me. So during this contest, I was up there for a week long, and I put every ounce that I could into this contest, emotionally, physically, mentally. And so just that relief of almost that the contest was over with, but 2, that it was successful. I had so many people from my tribe rooting for me, and all of my followers, I could feel their support across the state lines. So it's just amazing. When they announced my name, and then I heard it again, and then they said I was this year's winner, the room went black, and all of the emotions flooded the floor for me.
Give our viewers a sense of what the pageant and the competition is actually like. What kinds of things did you have to do leading up until the moment that you got crowned?
Yes. So something you prepare for at home that is judged during the contest is your essay. You prepare an essay for the contest. Then you have interviews. You also have the dance contest, a huge stage production talent presentation, and you also have the interview. And so this is staged out through about 4 days, and they happen all at separate times. We have a lot of good meeting groups, and we really prep for each time, but you also get to spend a lot of valued time with the 22 other contestants. So really you're running from 7:30 a.m. to 10 p.m., but there's nothing else like it.
I can imagine. And Tashina, you're only 18 years old, and this is actually 18 is the beginning age when you can actually run for Miss Indian World. So I'm really curious, was this something that you wanted to do since you were a child?
So that's actually funny for me. So I competed for my Miss Teen Rosebud title just this past summer. And it was actually my queen coordinator that was like, you should apply for Miss Indian World. In fact, she was first runner-up back in her year. And I was like, you know what? Like, that would be amazing. Like, what an opportunity to be able to represent yourself, your family, your tribe, your First Nations people. So I was like, I'll do it. I'll do it. So after I submitted my application, I started studying, watching all the old YouTube videos of past presentations and past stage 49 questions, and went to all the elders of my community and said, what would you like me to represent you as? What do I need to know as a Sicangu Lakota woman to go and prepare myself and to really represent my people? And so that, just putting that all together, it was exhilarating to be through the contest, but all the prepping, this was something I decided almost very last minute. It wasn't something I watched as a little girl, but I'm definitely extremely glad that I did do it.
When we're talking about preparation, your talent of the competition, your talent portion really focused on Lakota culture. Tell us about that.
Yes, so I basically went through a few different steps, a few components that really grew me as a Lakota. One of those was I sang my great-grandmother, Viola Good Voice's song, and it kind of grounded me and brought me together to prepare me for the rest of my presentation. So I talked about Wichagalata singing, which is women's backup singing, which is huge for our people. Next, I went to what it means to sha'ichia, to adorn someone, because when you love someone, you decorate them, you show them off. And so I beaded my niece's fully beaded buckskin junior girls Northern traditional top, and that was on stage with me. And then next, I went into how my elders taught me how to hunt and process deer, and I was able to shoot one live arrow straight across the stage.
That is so fun and really bold, I should say. I'm really curious, as you enter your year as the title holder, what kinds of goals, what kinds of things do you want to make sure that you're doing in this year?
So as you mentioned, I'm 18 years old, which is still fairly close to my youth. And I'm really passionate about my youth. Growing up, I had a great amount of support from my community, my parents, my friends. So I really want to provide that support and be the role model for our upcoming Indigenous youth, because they are intelligent. They're so creative. The thoughts they come up with are amazing for whatever they're passionate about. So I really want to fill my role on inspiring our next generations to be our next leaders, and that I want to show them how important their cultural identity is and how strong they can be, how their ancestors' blood are in their veins, and that they have that support and strength to carry them to pursue whatever they want in life. So for this following year, I really want to inspire our youth and let them know they can be right where I am. If they want to be their tribal president, they want to be the United States president, that they can go achieve their goals. So this upcoming year, I'm really excited to be there for our youth.
Well, Tashina, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your message.
Thank you very much.
An Indigenous educator is being honored by the White House. Jerad Koepp is the first Native Teacher of the Year from Washington State. Last week, he visited the White House, where First Lady Jill Biden recognized him in her speech. He is currently a Native Student Program Specialist at the North Thurston Public Schools located on Nisqually tribal lands. Hello, Jerad, and thank you for joining us today.
Hello, and thank you for the generous invitation to be with you today.
So your trip to the White House, tell us how it started and maybe how it went.
Well, last week, all of us Teachers of the Year from all 50 states and territories gathered together for a wonderful time of team building, professional development, celebration, and advocacy, which really culminated in our time as guests of the White House.
And at this event at the White House, were you surprised that your name was included in this speech from the First Lady?
It was an incredible, unexpected surprise. It was really humbling and inspiring to be able to represent not only Native educators, but also Native education, and to really shine some much needed light on all of our Native students across Turtle Island.
I heard that you're the first Teacher of the Year from Washington State. Was that something that surprised you, and can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, the state selection process was an equally incredible journey, and to be able to be a first from our state comes with a lot of exciting opportunity, but also a lot of responsibility that we have so much to represent, not only in education as educators, the students and communities that we serve, but also in the long run, hopefully to inspire future Native educators. As a Native educator in my state, I represent only one of 0.7% of all teachers.
This week is actually National Teacher Appreciation Week, so happy Teacher Appreciation Week to you. I'm really curious, now that we're in this next phase of the pandemic, if you can maybe talk about the experiences that you had through the pandemic and sort of how your students are feeling right now.
The transition has been equally difficult, but I feel like as Native people, we always rebuild, and we always rebuild from a place of community. So the more opportunities within education that we can draw upon the support of our educators, both in school and out of school, human and non-human, the more that we can reconnect, the more we can revitalize and get back on track. So much of the work that we did last week with the National Teacher of the Year program wasn't about content. It was about relationships. And we need to begin that process and really continue that process of healing that all of our communities need right now.
When you're talking about relationships, the fact that your Native students have Native teachers in their schools, do you think that that's something that empowers them, or how does that affect the way that they learn and grow?
Well, there's an old saying, you can't be what you can't see. And to be a Native educator is really a calling. And to be able to sometimes be the only teacher in your school representing your students, it's a unique opportunity for students to be able to see someone like them with similar experiences where they can really connect and feel understood. And that's something that we can provide for all of our students, but the connections with Native education and Native educators really benefits all students.
When you're talking to other Native educators around the country, what are some of the things that they're observing in their schools, or what kinds of conversations do you typically have?
A lot of it is really about celebrating the work of our students and the growth in our communities. It's really an exciting time in Native education, whether it's in tribal education or in public education. 93% of Native students attend public schools. The visibility has increased so much. The call to do more, to contribute more, and represent us more within content and instruction and in the profession has really grown. So really, a lot of the conversations I'm having is about how to expand and deepen our capacity.
That's something that we've observed as well. We've been reporting on our newscast that high-level officials like the Secretary of Education have been visiting tribal lands recently. And of course, as we mentioned, the White House inviting you and others to join their celebrations. Is that something, is that something that has grown since you've become an educator? The fact that more federal officials, it seems like, are paying attention to Native education?
Definitely. In my early days, beginning in Native education, visibility and self-advocacy were critical because we're not just here for us, we're here for our students and we're here for our people. And now with that increased exposure and visibility, more stakeholders and policymakers are coming to the table to say, hey, we recognize you're still here and your experience contributes a lot to the conversation and your knowledge can contribute a lot to the solutions moving forward.
Jerad, before we leave you, I want to make sure that I give you the chance to speak to Native educators who may be watching this interview. If you're speaking to a Native teacher in a different state than where you live, what do you say to them and what is your message?
Keep up the good work. Education can be challenging, but is incredibly meaningful. It's an opportunity for us to connect in our own cultural journey as at the same time, we help revitalize the culture and the sense of inclusivity for our students. We represent a lot and we can bring a lot of positivity for the strength of our people long into 7 generations.
Well, Jerad, thank you so much and congratulations again to you.
Thank you.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For more news, visit IndianCountryToday.com. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives. I am Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.